So I always like to start with just a little moment and some gratitude for us being able to do this today, and just appreciation for y'all and everyone who's gotten on here to support us. So thank you. But my name is Robert White, and welcome to the Any Length Retreat webinar. We really appreciate you being here and showing us the support. And this is crazy. So this is our first national webinar, and the purpose of this webinar is to talk to Anthony Brooks. He's an alumni of Any Length Retreat, and he is recovered from addiction. And that's really the purpose, to hear his experience. And so Evan and Anthony are going to be talking. Evan's going to ask Anthony some questions about his experience, obviously before the Any Length Retreat, during and after. And Evan, for those of y'all who do not know Evan, he's actually an alumni of Any Length as well, but he is our admissions and business development coordinator for Any Length Retreat, and he is in long-term recovery also. So I don't want to, spend time talking a whole lot about me. But, once again, Robert White, I'm the founder of Any Length Retreat, and I also suffered from addiction, and I recovered from addiction. And really, as I was going through my sobriety, I really wanted to make this possible for other men and their families. And so our mission at Any Length Retreat is for men and their families to find lifelong recovery through the application of the 12 steps. And we also want them to have that same experience that I got to have. And I believe that every man in their family, and really anyone that's seeking recovery, man or woman, can find that permanent recovery, and they can recover from addiction, because that's been my family and myself's experience. And it's just been beautiful, and also like baffling. And I never thought that was possible, because I went for years without thinking that it would be possible for me to have a life that is beautiful. I have wonderful friends, but it is possible, and you can recover for life. You can reestablish trust with your families, your friends, and yourself. You'll actually get to find out who you are as a person, and you get to reconnect to your true purpose, whatever that might be. And I found that through Any Length Retreat. And it's my life purpose to make a difference in men and their families' lives. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Evan. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for that introduction. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I think I can say I'm definitely thrilled with the turnout. This is awesome. Like Robert said, my name is Evan Morrison. I do admissions and business development here at the retreat. We have a very special guest tonight, Mr. Anthony Brooks. Thank you for being here, Anthony. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself to get started.
All right. Thank you, Evan. My name is Anthony Brooks. I'm from Arlington, Texas. I got sober August 23rd of 2017 after going through the retreat. I think that's enough for right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here, Anthony. So I guess to start us off, if you want to give us a little bit of background information about yourself, and kind of answer this question of, what was your life like in active addiction before coming through Any Length Retreat?
Okay. So like I said, I grew up in Arlington. I dropped out of high school when I was about 15. I had a pretty normal childhood stuff up to there, or so I thought. My parents got divorced early. Different things like that. We moved around a lot, and that pushed me into, I guess, soul searching. I started smoking weed at a very young age. I definitely remember not ever feeling a part of, no matter what I did. That was when I played sports, when I, anything, hanging out with my best friends at the time, anything like that. I always felt like I was alone in that room. And so, throughout my teenage years, I had, of course, progressed through weed, cocaine, ecstasy, all of those different things until I finally got to the one that hit the spot, which was like doing heroin, of course. That was like what I had been searching for when using all those other things. It's what like made me comfortable. It killed my anxiety, all of those different things. When I was about 18, um, I fell asleep at the wheel and T-boned someone. Um, Luckily, everyone was okay, but that led to like my first time actually getting in like real trouble for anything that I had been doing. Um, yeah, so I prolonged going to uh, really do anything about that charge for about 2 years. And then my first probation meeting, I failed a drug test, and they decided to put me in a 8 month court sanctioned treatment. So it was very lockdown like. It was a great day whenever I got to wear my own clothes again. Different things like that. So yeah, I went through there. And honestly, like being punished like that, it wasn't enough for me. Like shooting dope and doing heroin specifically, and also drinking alcohol. Like, um, yeah, as soon as I got out of treatment and like got back to normal life, it just all went away for me. Like it was like I never even was in trouble before. Once I got through probation, like all of those things were completely gone. There was no consequences anymore. Um, and sooner or later, like after 2 years on probation, staying dry, um, I fell back into the same cycle, drinking and then shooting dope again. Um, yeah, so, I lived in Denton, Texas after leaving that treatment center. I moved back in with an ex-girlfriend, like right away, right out of that treatment center. And that was a mistake. I basically just went right back to the same life I had before. And, I ended up like growing like and forming like a lot of friendships whenever I was in Denton. People that like I'm still close with today. We don't talk as much, but they were like a huge part of me uh, seeing how much of like a problem I had. They saw that difference of like just those 2 years and me like not using compared to whenever I started getting high again. We're like completely different people. Um, and that's like without like whenever I was just dry, basically, it was just like I just didn't have the drugs and alcohol in there. So like I was a little bit more aware of what I was doing, but it didn't kill like that sorrow and like misery, that same thing that I felt when I was a kid. Um, so like I built these relationships with these people, and they caught me shooting dope maybe 4 or 5 times, and I wiggled my way through it, like the Suboxone track, and then I'll go to drug counseling, or I'll go to meetings, and all of those things. Like I was just getting high right before I went, but it like would just lay them off me for a little bit. And so it got to the point where like this last time they caught me, like that was it for them. Um, they didn't want me around anymore. Choices, you know, and another friend of ours, and they set everything up, and we're like, we're ready for somewhat hope, I guess. And then like on the other side, it was like just like acceptance. Like this is just who I want to be now. I just want to get high on my own, be by myself, and you know, not end it. I don't think I ever wanted to like kill myself, honestly, because I'm like very, very scared of dying. But I did want to just like have everyone leave me alone.
Yeah.
And if I got rid of everyone, then, I could do whatever I want. So yeah, I chose the hope.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And thank you for sharing that with us. That was part of why I think we asked you to do this tonight is part of the program is using your experience to kind of help other people. So that's something I see you doing a lot. And I'm just thankful that you could be here tonight. So like you had said earlier, you've been sober for what now the past 2.5 years. So it sounds like something clicked, something was different than your other attempts in the past at sobriety. So if you wouldn't mind, telling us a little bit about what your experience was like at the retreat and what was it that made that difference to where now you've been able to maintain long-term recovery?
Yeah. Yeah, like I still remember the day, like riding down to the retreat. I was literally crying the entire time. And this was, I was 24 years old, just bawling my eyes out the whole way. Different things like that on the highway driving down from DFW. But like when I got there, I can honestly say that the first few days were pretty hazy. But like the biggest difference that I saw was just, I think the amount of community that like took me in right away. You know what I mean? Like I didn't like go there, fit in. It is like we were all trying to like be ourselves and like learn to love each other for like who we are and knowing that like we do have this thing in common and that's why like we have to like work together. There was like the sense of responsibility that came with it that I never had before, where it was like, I thought it was like honestly kind of dumb at first that like we had to wake up and clean and like go to these classes or whatever. But like after actually seeing like different things happening, like in my way of thinking, um, like I said, the relationships that like we're already building after like, 5-10 days of knowing someone, it was just like, I'm diving into this, like I want to see what this is all about, like not only the people like at the retreat and actually working there at the time, but the amount of people that always like frequented and always came in, like all the people that were like those people that are like, all right, that guy looks like he's got it, something cool. I want to do that. I want to be that person, So it's like I'm gonna go up and talk to him because like that's why we're here. I'm only here to like learn about myself and see what the hell is wrong with me. you know I just want to be like a productive and caring person, and I thought I was this whole time, and like that delusion was shut down there, and I was able to like see how my actions really affect people in the past and how I can use those as assets growing and like moving forward. um, there's a huge list of things that I could say about like my stay there and like in sober living. Me guys that were in the Any sober house too, like we just like that was the dopest house ever. You know what I mean? Like it was a great time. We loved it so much that I almost didn't. Like I actually like was like I don't know if I want to leave yet. I think
Yeah,
I should stay like 3 more months, and then it would have been 3 more months. But yeah, it was a blast.
that's that was a great man. That's one of the things I've always loved about ALR is the community, both at the retreat and back. That's what's kept me around. Had you ever worked the 12 steps like before coming through ALR?
I had worked 3 steps.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, like I went to meetings and stuff. When I think the first time I went to like any kind of 12-step meeting, I was 18. That was like the first time my a family member that's also like in the program took me, and like I think like that was like the moment that I realized that using drugs like wasn't fun anymore, and that like I just had to keep doing them. So like the experience was pretty new whenever it came to like coming to the retreat and, you know, working in the big book. Definitely a new experience, and I'm like very grateful for it. To not have like any kind of past notions or anything towards it. It was just like, this is all brand new. This is awesome.
Very cool. So I guess let's talk, if you want to describe, and this can be outside of recovery as well, like what your life looks like today, whether that's professionally, it sounds like you have a girlfriend, stuff like that. And then also, another reason we asked you to do this is, you're one of the people we see continuing to work with guys that are at the retreat, continuing to sponsor people. So what does your life look like as an alumni of ALR, and kind of how do you stay involved in the fellowship?
Yeah. So whenever I did move down here, I was working at Olive Garden still. I'll just start with like, professional life. So I was working at Olive Garden still. Pretty much had like been set on the idea that like I was going to work there forever. I was comfortable and I was used to it. And yeah, I saw myself just kind of staying in that comfort and never really reaching out for something else. It was about a year into being down here that I was offered a job at a manufacturer and circuit board assemblies, and I got the job there without any experience, and like it has truly like blossomed into a career, like to the point where it's possible that it could be like my company one day kind of stuff. It's like nuts, out of a storybook. Like, no, like just took me in without me knowing anything about anything. Like I still don't even really know that much. And so, like that has been like unimaginable. That's something that definitely would have never happened. Like I could barely keep my job at Olive Garden in Denton whenever I was, drinking and drugging all the time. Like seriously, like on the edge of being fired every single shift. And so like, like that's a true, just like black and white, like you can see the complete difference in that whole scenario, just like the way that, and this is something that like I learned in the retreat is like the respect for a place like that, like the respect for someone else that I love and care that I can like give someone in return. Like all I need is to like spread that positivity to someone else. And that's kind of like the idea that goes around everything all day long. You know what I mean? Is like I try as hard as possible to not think about myself anymore. And like, how can I not do that and turn my thoughts to someone else? And so, yeah, my girlfriend moved down here also. She was with me like while I was using. She actually drove me to the retreat on her birthday.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. My sobriety date is the day after her birthday. And so, she stuck it out in between all of that. Like she worked in Denton, and took care of herself while I was in the retreat. You know what I mean? Like, and when she came down here, like the relationship has gotten so much better. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like drunk, like arguing with her and like trying to make her two-step in the freaking living room while we're sitting there by ourselves watching The Office. And then her telling me to leave and I just say no and like go get in her bed, even though it was her apartment. Different things like that. And now like, those kind of things don't happen. Like I'm able to like be present. We have a house, but we don't own it, but we rent it. And like I have like a car that I bought, like a brand new car, first time in my life. I was driving a 94 Buick Roadmaster when I came down here.
Wow.
Yeah, I promise you I will drive that thing again at some point in my life. It'll come back. But yeah, I guess like, material things, it's like, that kind of stuff has been cool, but like hasn't really been the focus all the time. You know what I mean? Like the idea that I've had instilled in me is like, all I do is, you know, and sometimes I don't like it, and sometimes I can find gratitude in it. And, you know, that's kind of like the ebb and flow of this thing is like, not everything's super dope all the time, but like it's way, way better than it ever was before I came here, before I went to the retreat, any of that stuff. Like it's, I don't know, like these things are tough because like it's so hard to explain like how amazing it is getting on the other side of this thing. For real. Getting taken back right now.
That's beautiful, dude. I don't think I've ever had this chance to like hear, you know, your story all the way through. You know, I've known you through this process, and you're a great guy. I'm just really happy for you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all doing this and putting it on. It's
Yeah, this
really
is.
cool.
So I have one last question for you, and kind of a topic I wanted to focus on tonight that we'll ask Robert about as well, is kind of like, you know, I talk to a lot of people on the phone throughout the day, and for the most part, you know, it's family members calling in for a loved one, and typically that person is not ready or not willing to seek help. So, you know, a question I get a lot is kind of, you know, how do we have this difficult conversation with, you know, a person we care about, um, to urge them to seek help, you know? So I wanted to ask you, what did that process look like for you? You touched on it a little bit earlier, but what was that kind of final tipping point or conversation that made you the possibility of seeking recovery?
Um, yeah. I mean, mostly like, of course, it was like I said, like the ultimatum. But like for my family, I and my friends and Amanda, like my girlfriend, I had them all split up into their own groups. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? It was like if somebody was suspicious, no one was talking to the other person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like a huge part of it that finally like cracked me was like they got together. You know what I mean? Like they were talking to each other the whole time. Like I'm like in my mom's ear trying to manipulate her into letting me do something else. And then like my friend like Kim would just like call her and just like shut that down instantly. You know what I mean? So it was like a huge part of it was like there's nowhere else to run. You know what I mean? Like this is it, dude. Like this is all you have. Uh, you lose her, you lose us, you lose your family. Like, go do your thing if you want to, but like, we're handing you a way out right now. And like, thank God, like, I wasn't, willing at the time to just like send it and, go live on my own in my car without insurance or registration or anything. Um, like I would have literally like even my job too, because like all of my friends we worked together, so they were just going to tell the manager like, "Hey, Anthony's been shooting dope in the bathroom," and it'd been like, "Okay, he's fired." It'd have been super simple for them just to like end everything. And so, um, it took some contemplation and like some talks with Robert, and you know, like that I think Robert honestly is the reason why I came. Like after talking to you, it I don't know, it made me feel like comfortable with the idea, because like my biggest thing that I kept spouting out was like, I don't want to be away from everyone for so long. And they're like, well, you've been away from us for a really long time now because you've been getting high. And like I think Robert said something like, if you come right now, then you'll be out by Christmas or something like that. And I was like, all right, sweet. That sounds good, I guess. Let's do it. And then like instantly, anyways, that's what happened for me. So I don't know if hopefully someone can relate to that, but
Yeah, I mean, that's super common. Like it's a hard thing to say to someone that you care about. Um, but oftentimes like it does take that kind of hard line. And I'm glad you mentioned Robert. This is a person I go to for advice a lot. So Robert, we wanted to know, what kind of advice and what kind of coaching do you offer families when, they're preparing to have this conversation with a loved one? Like what's the best way to go about that?
I mean, Anthony said it. I mean, that's really what happened with me. Like when the line was finally drawn in the sand, that like wasn't these just imaginary lines that my family time and time after like said like, hey, this is a problem, like we're going to send you to treatment or whatever, right? And I went to 4 treatment centers, and like the enabling helped my family. Like they had to have that experience of enabling. And I don't think it's right or wrong, right? It feeds the addiction, but it's necessary, just like it's necessary for us as addicts and alcoholics to have our experience and figure out that like we need to do something different. Like my family has to have that same experience, because it is a family illness and it takes 2 to tango. It's like how I treat my parents, how I treat my significant others, how I treat my friends, while in active addiction, right? That teaches them how to treat me, and vice versa. So, I think it's very important for everyone to get on the same page. And that's like the biggest thing to do, because like if you're in a household, and like even in my household, like I played mom against dad all the time. And it's very tough, and like mom would listen to me, or, dad, rarely, but dad did me rarely. Because I was able to hang some things over his head, like I'll use guilt. Like I use these tools to manipulate my family, because like the last thing I want to do, I know I must do it, but I don't want to get rid of the solution that I'm using to help me survive, which is drugs and alcohol. That's my solution. And it's causing problems throughout the rest of my life, like this tornado. But what I would say is there's a great book, and it's called Love First, and it really talks about diving into the solution. Because once I start diving into the solution as a family member, for my loved one who's suffering from addiction, then actually like the percentage of me actually being a recovered addict like greatly shoots up, because that means like my family is going to start looking at some things within their life, and they're going to start doing some healthy things for themselves too. But there's a lot of great resources out there. But the problem is the addiction, and it's not anything else. And so like if we can face and get all on the same page, then that's the best route, I believe.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Robert. So we've got a little time here at the end. I have a couple of kind of frequently asked questions, but if anyone who is participating would like, you can add questions to this Q&A chat down here at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to throw some in there. So here's one that I was talking to someone today, and basically their son, obviously struggled with addiction, but they also had some co-occurring kind of mental health issues, like bipolar disorder, stuff like that. And their question was, can 12-step based recovery be effective for someone who does struggle with other mental health issues?
Is that for me?
It can be for anybody.
Okay. I only want to say that like I haven't struggled with any mental issues or anything like that. Maybe like a little bit of anxiety, and definitely like meditation and different things like that of definitely being like working on the steps, and like being spiritual in general has worked with like anxiety and nerves. Yeah. But I haven't had any kind of real issue with that. So Robert may know better. I don't know anything about it. This is usually like a point where I would like steer someone to someone else that I know that has dealt with it more.
Totally. Got anything, Robert?
What?
Got anything for that?
Yeah, I've seen it work. I think, first I have to have that capacity to be honest, right? And I suffered from, ADHD. I was diagnosed with that in first grade, and put on Ritalin. tried several different things. I struggled with depression and anxiety. And so I didn't know what was wrong with me, you know. And the tools that are offered to me in this way of life, because it's a way of life. And if I look at it, it's a parallel, right? Like opposites ends of the spectrum. But just like in my addiction, like I had to do certain things to stay, somewhat sane, if that's even real, right? Not be sick. So it's the same thing, except instead of it getting progressively worse, right? Like it did in my addiction, every day got worse. Every day gets better, right? As long as I'm continuing to live this way of life. And certainly, like I'm a fan of like, if I can be honest, right? Like if I'm not going to, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a counselor, right? Like what are my motives? Like things can get addressed and people can be placed on medication that will help. But it's just a tool, right? Like it's not really like the medication's not going to fix me either. It's like I have to create habits in my life, and that takes time, but it takes a whole lot less time than, like it took however long it took for me to get to that place to reach out. Like my life started transforming much faster once I could have that capacity to be honest and do some uncomfortable work and look at myself and like realize like I don't have to do this alone. There's other people that, have walked through this. Matt Lohman, our director of operations, he'd be great to speak on this. And like there's many others, that suffer from mental health. And like we do have that, with the fear response. It's talked about like whenever I'm in fight or flight, I get on this main highway in my brain, and it's usually that self-sabotaging behavior. So like I have to have something to interrupt that. And me participating in the 12 steps, and anything else is going to greatly impact me, being able to like, not just function in life, but prosper and succeed and like, do the things that I want to do.
That's a great answer. Thank you guys for adding questions here. We've got a couple good ones. I'm going to read this one first. It says, what is the best way to support and help someone after they have gone through recovery? That's a good one.
I will go first. All right. So, I mean, the ways that like my family has supported me has been different than I've seen other families. And like people have been successful both ways. Honestly, like I've seen like I've had friends that, completely get cut off either way, even if they are in recovery, like there's still like that mending process between like the family and the person. And so like my family like super supported me through everything. You know what I mean? Like even when I went to the retreat, when I was in treatment the first time, at the end of it, like my mom, since like this quarantine thing has happened, she's been like texting me and calling me every single day, in the morning and at night before I go to bed. Everyone has like stayed in contact with me and checked in with me. I mean, it's the same thing that I would do to another friend that's in recovery. Like that's a huge part is like, it's insane how good someone feels when you call them and just say, how are you? You know what I mean? Like to get that call from someone else, it's amazing. Like for some reason, it's such a small thing, but like that little tiny phone call and someone checking in and like actually like caring and it's amazing. So yeah, I think like it's really hard to say like what would be like the best way to support, in my opinion, just because like it's totally up to the person. Like it was totally up to me. Like I could just as easily like gotten out of the retreat and everyone was like checking in on me and stuff, and I was like, I hate this. I don't want y'all to check up on me. Yeah. And then like just dip out and do my own thing because somebody was checking in. You know what I mean? It's like it's so up in the air. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it can look, different for different families. For me, I was really lucky to be in like a sober living environment. and do like some recovery coaching stuff where, I was put in a position where I was surrounded by people who had kind of gone through the process and were able to coach me on like me taking the responsibility for rebuilding that trust. It's like my mom shouldn't have to call me every week and ask if I've been to a meeting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really the emphasis on me reaching out to them and asking them like how they're doing and checking in, and like in that conversation, maybe sharing how things are going with me. But like, I put my family through so much that, I thankfully received the feedback and the advice to be the one that makes the effort there, so definitely, I think a supportive environment is being in sober living. I mean, I was in sober living, over a year and then some. And like Anthony said, it was a great experience. I was surrounded by people that kept me on the right track. Looks like we got someone here in the chat.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
I think the best, well, like obviously it depends on the family, but it's going to be similar, is like be clear in communication, which is the toughest thing I think to do. But if I say, like, this was a big thing that I would always twist with my family, is like whatever they said, like I would push on that, to see if it was true, especially like before. But like after I've gone through recovery, allowing me to start having my experience, but also, it's kind of like figuring out who your new son is or new loved one is, because like there's going to be a shift, right? Like if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like the same person who went into the retreat, like I'm going to be the same person. But how I interact with life is going to be significantly different, right? Because like now, instead of like not to say I'm never going to be dishonest again, or I'm never going to make mistakes again, right? Like I'm human, but I'm going to start taking initiative in my life. And so the things that, like even still today, like my mom always like, and I love her for this, right? But like she always wants to help me.
Yeah.
And so now I can allow her to help and be a part of it, but like I'm not always asking for that help, right? Like now it's like I get to have that support, instead of like I must have that support, because like if she doesn't do this for me, like I'm gonna fail algebra. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's like a silly example, but it's like it's true. Like, or like if I don't, if my mom doesn't call and make a doctor's appointment for me, I'm never gonna go see the doctor, right? Like I can do those things now, but it's like, I think like sitting down as a family, and discussing that, like, and asking that question. I think it's a great question to ask each other. Like ask your loved one who is in recovery, like, how can we support you? And then like have that conversation, and then, maybe take that back to your support group and say, hey, like, this is how you want support. Like, is there any red flags there or whatever? And I think like leaning in on that intuition, you kind of like gather that as you go. So that was helpful for my family. It's just like starting that dialogue, like what's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Robert. Here's another great question that is kind of related. So I understand that you should all be on the same page, but my son keeps getting rescued by others. When they are done with him, they bring him back to me. It's a cycle that keeps getting worse. Do I just refuse to take him back?
So, I have someone that I work with that is going through kind of the same situation. And, we worked with her. It was like her daughter that was, doing the same exact thing. It's like hop to this family member, kind of like me and Robert also shared about, like, I'm going to move to like this next person, and now I'm going to go to my aunt's. Now I'm going to go stay at this friend's house until like I run out of places to go. And yes, every single time I went right back home to my mom's house. And like the same thing that I told her was, yes, because like that's what it took for me. Like the only thing that like was gonna help me is for them to like finally shut it down. I think like Robert said it perfect. Like no matter what they told me, it was like I'll wait a day and I bet she'll calm down and I can get $50 out of her. You know, I'll wait a couple of days and I'm sure she'll let me come stay there again. Or like when the retreat was happening, when she was trying to get me in there, I was like, I'll wait a couple days. This will all blow over. I'm going to be back doing my thing, going to be back to work in a few days. No problem. You know, and so like, because that's how it was for so long. And like what you said, I don't like blame my mom at all. It's like, you know, that's what it took for me. It was like, you know, I pushed and took and just was careless and irresponsible for so long, like especially towards family, that like whenever it finally came to that point where they were like no more, it became real, you know, like okay, like this is actually affecting other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you for sharing on that, Anthony. Robert, do you have anything on that? No? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I went through a similar thing. Awesome. Thank you for that response. Yeah, so this has been fantastic. I don't see any real new questions. We can both answer this very shortly. I see you in the chat. Okay, so you hear this a lot. It's like I talk to people and they're like, you know, comes from a great family, had a great upbringing. Why are they a drug addict? There's no reason they should be a drug addict. So I guess to Anthony and Robert, do you feel like you being an addict or alcoholic has anything to do with your background and the way you were raised?
Robert. Oh,
Yeah,
you.
no, go ahead. You first.
I mean, I thought like there was no way that I could be, because like my stigma, or like the thought like of an alcoholic or a drug addict was like someone who, you know, was drinking out of a brown paper bag, homeless, right? Someone underneath a bridge, you know, using heroin, whatever. And like I did both of those substances, but it has nothing to do with like where I'm from, or you know where I live. And that's the thing, is it impacts everyone, and it really has to do with like how do I, like whenever I use a substance, do I lose control? And then that's the thing, can I control every single time the amount I put in my body? You know, whether it's alcohol, whether it's pot, whether it's heroin, whatever it is. And like whenever I was able to simplify that and like really kind of look at my truth, instead of like, oh, okay, well, I'm not from there, so like I can't be a drug addict, or I'm not, you know, homeless on the streets, like, you know, I was couch surfing or whatever. Like, but I had to come to that truth, like, you know, and I think because of that, you know, I think we've started to, you know, in America, like starting to break that stigma down, and like it's becoming like we're getting more and more aware, right? Like I can't just say no to drugs and alcohol. Like there has to be a more efficient, more effective path. And I, you know, yeah, I need to get some like not punishment. Like I need to be like, if I get in trouble around it, like I need to deal with that accordingly. Like I can't just keep getting swatted on the wrist. But what is the solution? Like what kind of effective treatment is necessary for that? But I had to look at my experience, and it was helpful to talk to, you know, younger men, like younger than me, like that were afflicted by this, and like older guys too, and people my age, like, and I could start seeing like it didn't matter, like everyone's impacted by this.
Great answer, Robert. Well, everybody, you know, Anthony, thank you for being here tonight. This went very well. Appreciate you sharing a lot about yourself. I think, you know, at least speaking for myself, I got a lot out of what you said. And we'll have to do this again soon. This was fun. And we appreciate you guys being here, and thank you for the great questions.
Yeah, thank you for setting it up. Thanks for asking me. It was fun. I liked it.
Love you, dude. That was awesome. Thank you everyone for attending tonight. That was awesome.